كل من آدم وآدم من تراب. All people are from Adam, and Adam is from dust.
Ăn trái nhớ kẻ trồng cây. When you eat a piece of fruit, remember who grew it.
لا تكرهوا شيئا لعله خير لكم. Don't hate that which befalls you. It could be the best thing.
Ty jesteś najmocniejsza. You are the strongest one.
Neki kar, darya mein dal. When you do something good, do it and then forget about it.
Throughout your life, strive.
Nunca esqueça aonde o seu coração está. Never forget where your heart is.
Ramallah, my childhood home. The most beautiful sunsets, drinking afternoon tea with friends in transparent glasses as they stop by to laugh and talk, Arabic rolling off their tongues. Sipping coffee and reading people's fortunes in the empty cups. Looking out over the horizon at dusk time as I sit on the roof, where I can begin to spot the lights of Tel Aviv at a distance. Ramallah, the occupying army, the military checkpoints, the curfews, the closures, the roadblocks, schools that don't open, roads that lead nowhere, censorship, arrests, gunshots, and rocks. Ramallah, the land of the dead, mothers in mourning, wasted potential, the sad reality of the place that I call home. I grew up living in two worlds. I was born in Nazareth, and technically I'm an Israeli citizen. When people ask, who are you? I say, well, I carry an Israeli passport with a stamp in it, identifying me as an Arab. But who am I? I'm a Palestinian woman struggling to name my identity with the dignity and honor that it deserves in a world that doesn't want to see or hear. I'm a woman who's grown up under occupation, decade after decade. I've grown up resisting the enemy. I've grown up being the enemy in a land where life is cheap.
Having to walk to and from school, knowing that there's constantly a soldier presence in your midst at all times, whether it's the jeeps that go, screeching by at all paces and all, speeds, or whether it's, just the presence of soldiers as you're walking home, when you're at school, the sounds of demonstrations.
It's like a game. Kids think they're immortal, but real soldiers with real machine guns are in their faces waiting for the wrong move. One day, when I was in the 6th grade, 11 years old, we heard gunshots outside. There were protesters out there demonstrating. One of them could be my sister. The teachers hush us to be quiet. Shh! We run across the school grounds into another building. We run down a dark hallway, up the staircase, into the back room of a library. We're told, sit on the floor and be quiet. I sat there in the corner, crying and hiding, ashamed that I was crying at the age of 11. We heard the soldiers march through our school. We heard their boots. I never forget that sound. لو رحل صوتي ما بترحل حناجركم.
If I lose my voice, your voices aren't lost.
عيوني على بكرة وقلبي معكم.
My eyes look unto tomorrow, and my heart goes with you.
لو راح المغني بتتم الأغاني.
If the singer disappears, her songs remain.
تجمع القلوب المقهورة واللي بتعاني.
Bringing together hurt hearts that are suffering.
All over the world, people see and hear about us on TV. To them, we're silent, we're nameless and faceless. We're not real. But if we were real, if we were their mothers and their sisters and their friends and their doctors and teachers, and they opened their eyes and they saw us with our humanity, with our dreams, with our struggles, with our fears, and they took that time to really open up their eyes and see us, what new possibilities could unfold for all of us.
There's a sound from my childhood that I can never forget. It's a cry of a tiger trapped in her cage in the zoo near our house. Every night I would close my eyes and listen to the army helicopter overhead. And then the sad, hollow sound of tiger moaning. The sound that we all understood but nobody spoke about. It's a cry of being trapped with no place to go. Vietnam is a country that's always at war. It's been occupied for thousands of years and then split in two. In my family, some went to north to fight and some stay south. Brothers are fighting brothers. We don't know who is who anymore. We all trapped together, and our scars have become our genes that we pass down generation to generation. My parents tried to give us a normal life, but the war is all the way going on in the backdrop, taking away our man, our livelihood, our dreams. We tried to go to school, but what was the point when there was no job or future? All we could do was to try to survive day to day. At night, we listened to the radio play song about separation and death. And then the tiger howling. My mother taught me survival skills. Always keep your eyes and ears out open. Sit by the exit. And if you're in a terror and need to get out quickly, run under seat so you won't get trembled. Don't venture out. Don't trust anyone. In Vietnam, there was no phones or TV. The elders look up at the skies and the stars to tell us what's happening. They could tell when the rain would come, what was happening at war, who would die or live. And if we want to reach somebody far away, we think hard about them, and then later on we found out that they were thinking about us also. Heavens and earth are guides of our life.
Heavy new fighting broke out in Saigon tonight.
But in April 1925, when the West saw on the news that Saigon was about to fall, we didn't know. Luckily, my sister living in the U.S. called my other sister in Singapore come to rescue us. The chaos at the airport. She begged the American soldier to let us out. We left on one of the last DC-10 transport planes out of Saigon, 6 days before the city fell. At the refugee camp, we waited for 3 months for a family to sponsor us in the U.S. Finally, a farmer from Arkansas came, an older man, who is interested in taking me. You be my girl. My parents were so happy. But I knew something wasn't right. So I told them I couldn't go with him. And they were very upset. You're not a good girl. You didn't obey us. We sacrificed for you, and you couldn't even do this for us. I was raised the traditional way. My first duty was my family. But somehow I couldn't do this. Finally, a Lutheran church in New Jersey sponsored my family. My sister and I went to New Zealand for 2 years. And then we came back here.
I work with worldwide refugees, and they came from different cultures and different backgrounds, and they come with different expectations. But I see the same wounds that they have when they go through this type of experience. I've seen the same facial expressions when the mother gets so hurt. I was just worried.
It took me a long time to build a trusting relationship with someone. I can be a friend, but not a buddy. After I married my husband, Dan, we divorced for 5 years before we married each other. During our separation, I realized that I was shut down and couldn't trust him or anybody else. I've been protecting myself for so long that I couldn't know how to open up to love, his or mine. I seen the same thing in my sister and other refugees that I worked with. But Dan was patient. Finally, I decided that if I ever wanted to be close to somebody, I had to take the risk. Free fall, just like you climb the mountain. And then you learn to trust somebody behind you, falling backward. At least I know I opened up to love and sharing. And if it didn't work out, I knew I'd be okay.
The refugee process is very lengthy. I'm talking about just the physical process of just materials process, housing, food, and job, and that. And then on a deeper level, the anguish or the mental process, that is really hard. I mean, I've been here, my family been here refugee for 25 years. We still haven't worked through whatever that we carry with us.
War is war, doesn't matter where. It affects generations, affects my mother, me, and eventually my son. Sometimes violence and fighting are locked in together that you thought is normal. You thought it's normal being at war since being born, to have your dad away and your mom is the breadwinner. It's normal to always be on guard and not to trust, to believe that there is no future. My parents tried to protect us from evils humans do to each other, brother to brother, nation to nation. But it takes generations to heal the wounds.
The tiger's pacing in her cage, torn between despair and rage. Cries out through the shadows of the bullet-torn night, while wingless birds begin their flight. The earth's breaking open, our wounds have run deep. Let's heal them together, so the tiger can sleep. The air is
is heavy with the rolling of thunder. All the animals run for cover, but the tiger stands upright in the valley of fear, holding the people's heartbreak and tears.
Standing above a higher level than usually that I see help me to somehow feel a little freer and to able to look beyond the cage, the mental cage that I have been carried.
The jungle is burning. We will find the courage to make our journey through uncertainty, loneliness, violence, and fear. We'll always know that the tiger is near. The earth's breaking open, our wounds have run deep. Let's heal them together, so the tiger can see.
The Blue Nile and the White Nile rivers meet in the middle of my country, Sudan, and I love standing at the place where they meet. The two colors mixing into one. The place of merging is like my country, where Muslims, Christians, and enemies live side by side, where Arab and African dialects mix. My name is Barkai Muhammad Abdul Karim. It represents the African and Islamic culture in me. My mother always calls me Barkai, my African name, and my father and most of other people call me Muhammad. Recently, while living in the US, I began to understand the sufferings that slavery has caused to black people. And I began to feel even much closer to my African roots. Al-Damazin, Sudan is my hometown. Growing up there was like living in the African jungle, the kind of you read about in books. From my mother, I gained a strong sense of spirituality and what it meant to be a Muslim. Growing up, each morning I made daily prayers of gratitude. And each morning, we would go and knock at our neighbor's door and say, good morning. Is everyone okay? We would go to at least 7 houses, because in Islam, the Prophet teaches we are responsible to the 7th neighbor. People felt connected, and there is a care in a community. And people acted as though they have much abundance of food and kindness. They just invite you. That's the way it was when I was growing up. But my sheltered view about life changed high school. When I went to our capital city, there I saw people begging, families living outside mosque, and lost kids sleeping on the street. And you ask, why are these kids out here? They sleep on the street, pickpockets, and sniff gasoline. Then I began to think about the causes, trying to understand government, economics, and social policy. And I vowed when I graduate, the first thing I was going to do is build educational and social center for the lost kids. That's still my dream. But the civil war in Sudan had damaged so much. Agricultural resources were ruined. Sudan used to be the food basket of the world, but now it's having a hard time feeding its own citizens. War has affected everything. I decided to come to America to pursue my education, hoping that I would later return and help my people. But when I arrived in the US in 1992, I had a different sense. Education here, unlike where I went to Russia, to my college, isn't free. Everything here you have to pay for. I tried to help my people, so I started to look for a job anywhere. It was hard to find a job.
Are you looking for a job?
My English is not good.
Oh, you'll be fine. You can work at my store.
Sir, do you have the size 12?
Size 12. Speak English?
You know, he put me to work in the store alone with customers before I could even communicate. He trusted me because I am Muslim, the honesty part. But after September 11th, I had trouble finding an apartment in Jersey City. I called different places and introduced myself, Barkai Muhammad.
Are you Muslim?
Yes, I am.
Well, I charge $150 plus the first month's rent and extra for security.
Isn't that a lot?
For someone with your name, you'll be lucky if anyone will rent to you.
We still have prejudice, bias, hatred. People still learn to fear each other. Sometimes, at night, I still picture the big sky full of stars. And I think of all the nations living in war or peace, sharing the earth's abundance. And I think of how our water, food, land, and energy are divided so that many people have nothing and few have so much. All I can do now is pray that one day we all can see that we are all connected under the same night sky.
We all live under the same night sky, the same stars. When we look up and, you know, they say, wish upon a star. Everybody's wishing on the same stars.
For me, the night sky connects me to my family back home, and it makes me feel a little better. You know, they're not as far as I might think, as long as I'm thinking about them, and it's especially for new immigrants. I could imagine that would be kind of comforting for them to think about that you know, maybe at night when in different time zones that there are, you know, that they're looking at the same sky as we are.
When people think of Brazil, they think of soccer, carnival, and beautiful beaches. But to me, growing up there was a free childhood, spending a lot of time outdoors, playing on the red dirt of my small town. My mom is one of 8 children, my dad one of 20. Every weekend, the whole family would gather together, and we'd go to my grandmother's farm. There, we'd take a shower outside, and there would always be this big frog standing in the corner. My favorite thing to do growing up was going up the hill to my godmother's house. We'd sit on the sidewalk watching the cars pass by the unpaved streets. We could sit there for hours, looking at the stars, making different shapes and designs. Although my family moved around a lot, those stars never changed. When I was 4, my dad left Brazil and moved to the United States so he could give us a better life. I remember his occasional postcards from Newark and New York. To me, that was the greatest thing. I wanted to learn how to read and write so I could write him my own letters. A few years later, my mom and I came to join him. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment with my dad's cousins. This was the first time I was away from home. But my mom began to miss my brother and sister back in Brazil. So 6 months later, she and I moved back. At the end of '93, my dad moved back to be with us. Once again, our whole family was reunited where we had all been born. But my parents decided to get divorced. And a month later, my mom, sister, and I moved to the state capital. I remember all the traffic and noise. I wasn't sad to leave my dad behind. Instead, I was excited to start a new life. We only stayed there for 3 years before my mom decided to move once again to the rural area. Moving from a big city to a small town was a big change, but we made the best of it. But we only stayed there 3 months before my mom decided to move once again to the United States. We had an apartment close to the railroad station, and we had no furniture. My biggest challenge was learning English. I remember school aides saying, "Speak English, you're in America," when they heard my friends and I speaking Portuguese, the only language we knew. A few months later, my dad moved to join us. He and my mom wanted to try to work things out, but they were separated for too long and had different outlooks on life. More than ever, I was caught in their fights. This was the darkest moment I can remember. I even thought about taking my own life away to ease everything. Fortunately, 2 months later, my dad moved out and got an apartment with his new girlfriend. I don't remember feeling anything. After all, I never really had a paternal figure to look up to. 1 year later, my mom and I moved to Kearney, where we settled. The place that was once so strange and so cold now feels like home. Sometimes, when I'm sitting at my bed at night, I remember about all the moves and all the stages of my life. I think back to when I was younger, living in Brazil. People were coming to take away our furniture from the only house I'd ever known. I remember standing in the corner crying when my grandmother came up to me and she said, "Nunca esqueça aonde o seu coração está. Never forget where your heart is." Those words have guided me through difficult times. Never forget where your heart is.
Poland, the country of my people, comfortable, like my own blanket, the place where people have known me since birth, and I know every street and every corner where people's names sound like mine. Poland, pebblestone streets traced with tramway tracks, coming home from the town square and opening the thick door of my apartment complex, only to be hit with the clouds of aromas of Polish culture. Pierogi, kielbasa, naleśniki. Looking out my window and seeing the neighborhood kids play below. The place I'm told I belong, no one calls me names, and where I don't have to choose what language to speak. Everybody wants me to stay. Poland. Remnants from the concentration camps. Poverty. Communism. Being born to a single mother. There is no father. I have to hold my own hand. The country's poor, and so are we. We live with my grandparents. My grandmother and mother fight all the time over raising me. I don't know what my father looks like. He left my mother after she got pregnant with me. His absence has been my invisible teacher. Never abandoned. My mother worked as a nurse, but life was hard in Poland. People trample your dreams. There was no future for women, aside from obligations to domesticity. So when my mother met a Polish man claiming to be a rich construction worker in the United States, she decided to take me to America and start a new life. My first memory of my new stepfather was of getting off the plane in New York and seeing a fat, almost corpulent mustached man holding a bouquet of roses. He presented them to my mother, and then he took one out and handed it to me with the thorns still on it. It cut my hand and I bled. It was the beginning of things to come, like verbal threats, glass thrown at me, knives against my skin, sexual abuse. It was the beginning of my American childhood, locked away in my room, with the bed as far away from the door as possible. It was the TV as my friend, teaching me English and American customs, and sitcom stars of my very own family. All day, while my mother was out cleaning houses or working in a factory, I'd sit, watching and listening, the remote control firmly held in the palm of my hands. And at night, I'd watch the small beam of light under my door for his footsteps. And when I saw them, I'd quickly hit the mute button and try to hide on my bed, pretending to sleep, pretending to be invisible, holding my breath until he was gone, listening always to the sound of my mother's key in the front door, when I'd unlock my door and run down the hall into the home of her safe arms, free. We didn't leave him for a long time because he swallowed up her voice. Being an immigrant and being dependent upon a husband, she was vulnerable. He threatened her for deportation for working under the table, the only job she could get. But eventually, she spoke, speaking with the voice of all women, rising up saying no to oppression, violence, and war at home. Now I consider myself a Polish American, a woman. I speak for what I believe and have artistic blood that runs through me. I've been held down and gotten up. I've grown from every one of those sleepless nights and every single tear, each one. They become a part of my name, of womanhood found. Once you've been controlled, you know how precious your freedom is. Innocent roses, aroma so thick, I grew thorns, we grew thorns. We were the flowers he wanted to pick, I grew thorns, we grew thorns. Gotta hold the wound when you bleed, gotta speak out and plant the seed. Don't let anyone trample on your dreams. Don't let anyone trample on your dreams. The actual rose that still hasn't gone away, that hasn't faded because of the presence of thorns. I think that's present every time I see my mother, every time I see my sister, and anytime I speak Polish. It's anything that reminds me of home and an innocent life and childhood. Gotta hold the wound when you bleed, gotta speak out and plant the seed. Don't let anyone trample on your dreams. Don't let anyone trample on your dreams. A person coming from another country is again very blind to everything. They're very soft. They're their own rose. They're unadulterated at that point, and they come to this country or any other country, and they have to grow their own thorns and protect themselves and grow yet again.
Americans, they have grown here, so they don't know how hard it is moving from another country to here. They think that it's easier to just overnight learn the language and adapt oneself, but they should understand that moving here is a tough process because not only are you learning language, but also you have nothing. You're starting from scratch. I remember when we moved here, we went collecting garbage as furniture for our house, and for the first week that we were here, we slept on the floor, and that's not many things that Americans understand.
I had two cousins here, and they, young guys, they were going to college, and they lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and we stayed with them for about a month, I think.
When my family came here, there was no refugee program. It came later.
Hearing English I was completely clueless. What really helped was watching TV, because you really get to see the actions, and then you can somewhat connect one thing to another and slowly figure out what it means.
Through like associating words with objects on TV and these Mr. Rogers and things like that, that would be like little teachers aside from school.
My mother is still learning English, and I translate for her whenever we go to places and whenever we have to call the phone company or the gas company, because for her it's easier to understand when she's face to face with someone than it is to talk over the phone.
My mother was very slow in learning the language at first. She went to classes, my stepfather just didn't even bother.
My mother and I used to fight a lot because she'd ask me to call her bosses, and I'd feel uncomfortable about it because I was a child speaking to an adult about her job. But as the years passed, I can sort of understand her a bit more, and I don't mind it now.
My father is, he's from the old school. So, you know, the old school as I know it. He's not the kind of person who shows a lot of affection or a lot of emotion. My story can start in a studio apartment in Jersey City. My mother, father, brother, sister, and I, sleeping on one mattress on the floor, huddled together, socks and gloves, in the winter cold. Immigrants. It's the story of the only Muslim boy hiding in the back of the class at a Catholic grammar school. A boy who in Pakistan, his first 7 years in Libya, who still spoke Urdu, did not yet know English. An immigrant story, a story about dreaming. But my life really starts with my father. I'm only a supporting character in a drama that he made possible, one about dreams unfolding. My father was born in India before Pakistan and India separated. He had 16 brothers and sisters, and growing up was quite rebellious. He and his own father had huge father-son conflicts, and he left home at an early age and started working at a shipyard. My mother and father had an arranged marriage, which my grandfather did not attend. And I was born in Pakistan in 1971. When I was about 2, we moved to Libya, where my father found a nice job. And then when I was about 9, my father brought us to the United States, hoping it would be a better life for his children. But when we arrived here, my father's degree didn't match up. He went from having a nice desk job to a place with no opportunities for him. So he decided to go back to school. I remember sitting with my father on many nights, watching him do his homework. I learned a lot about computer programming watching my father. I also learned a lot about pride, dignity, and perseverance. When he graduated and went looking for a job, he was either told that he was too old or didn't have enough education. Finally, he found a job at a pharmacy. His first day at work, he showed up in a suit and tie. The store manager took him to the back room and gave him a pricing gun. He stood all day. In fact, he stood all day for over 20 years in order to pay for our education. But growing up, I didn't appreciate that at all. See, every male goes through a period thinking they can do better than their father. I started to think my father was a failure. I blamed him when we didn't have extra money for toys. I blamed him when once I went to buy a 99-cent bat and ball set and didn't have the extra nickel for the tax. I started to think of him as a loser and had so much hostility. I remember thinking, why did you bring us here? I was so angry at him for trying new businesses that always failed. You are a failure.
At least I tried.
If I knew I was going to fail, I would never even try.
How do you know you will succeed or fail before you try? You do the best you can. If it's not meant to happen, it won't.
See, the joke was on me. My father is not a failure. I'm proud to be my father's son. It took me many years to fully appreciate the man he is. As new Americans, it's always the first generation that suffers. My father stood on his feet all day for 20 years. I tried to stand for one and thought never again. My father stood all day for 20 years because he had a dream for his children. A dream that to this day, I'm trying to live up to. When I'm on my deathbed, if I am 1/10 the man my father is, I'll be happy. My father, my best friend, my teacher, my heart.
When I was in the 8th grade, my friends and I would venture out to one of the street weddings, the Sahras, to watch the men dancing the traditional dapki. We'd see the shepherd with his ney or his mizhuas calling to the men who gathered round dancing depki, and we would watch and clap, being pulled by the ancient rhythms and melodies, feeling our bodies come alive with excitement. Even though depki is traditionally a male dance, we wanted to learn step by step until we too could dance our roots and legacy. I love dancing. Everything in me comes alive. I long to be taken back into that space that captures the essence of my identity. My love for a place, my love for a people, my love for a life that was once simple in nature. In the villages, we dance and volunteer. We build and teach, trying to make up for the non-existent government services. Often my heart is torn out for the pain I see, and yet our people still sing. Poets still write poetry. Dancers still dance. It's ingrained in our bodies.
I think in all folklore, there's your body kind of occupies a place that's not just your own. It's kind of open to a history somehow. There's a passion that comes out. There's a love that comes out, and it's a love of something that's beyond just you. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a very collective kind of a feel that you have, that you're very much in tune with a culture and with a part of your own history.
In 1948, when the State of Israel was established, my 16-year-old uncle was out of the country. For the past 54 years, he has not been allowed to return. He missed his sister's marriages and children. He missed having them meet his wife and his children. And when his mother was first sick, and then when she died, neither Israel or the Arab states would grant permission for them to cross the borders to meet. When the peace agreement with Jordan was signed, his family came to Amman to meet him, and we had a huge family reunion at an authentic Arab restaurant. The music played, the whole family danced and stood back to dancing with pure abandon at the joy of being reunited. Tears streamed down their faces. They danced, a language that everyone understood, a heartbeat that everyone heard, dancing and crying, dancing our lives. See me. I exist. I exist. I dance. I breathe. I am. I am the heartbeat of my people.
Oftentimes if I tell people that, oh yeah, I'm Palestinian, they'll immediately say, yeah, you come from a terrorist culture. You're terrorists, all of you.
Being Muslim, I never thought of being Muslim as a really big thing, or something so unique or so different from everybody else. The first time, excuse me, the first time that I saw that there was a difference was after the World Trade Center bombing, the first time that happened. I was at work and we were talking about some project. And one of my coworkers comes up to me and he goes, don't mess with Sabat, because you may find a bomb under your desk tomorrow.
We were in second period physics class, studying velocity. Our teacher was trying to have us compute how long it took for objects of a certain mass to reach the ground. He wrote on the board, falling bodies. Suddenly someone ran to the classroom and told us the first tower was hit. I couldn't help but cry as we watched everything through the picture window. Everything was happening across the river. And I kept seeing the words falling bodies on the chalkboard until he erased the words.
I was in Los Angeles, driving and listening to the radio. When I got home, I couldn't stop watching TV. The faces on the windows kept haunting me. And I kept wondering what was going on through their minds and hearts, those people who were jumping out of windows.
So that moment, it sparked me right back to Vietnam. Growing up during the war, I flashed back to the chaos, the noise, all mixed together. It happened for an instant, but it took me weeks to digest it. I kept telling myself, you're safe now, you're here, you're safe.
I just moved here 2 weeks before to New York from the Middle East. I heard the plane fly really low, and I thought planes don't fly that low, not in the United States. Then all of my survival skills kicked in. It all felt too familiar.
My first thought was, please, please don't let it be Muslims who did this.
Walking home from school that day, you could hear the quiet. No cars in the street, just the sound of people walking in silence. And the sound of the American flags waving against their poles.
When it first happened, I had mix of feelings. It was a reality check for many of us. As a Muslim, you think you will be attacked. Your sister will be attacked. But then, our Jewish neighbors brought flowers to the mosque. And one woman wore a hijab to escort some of the Muslim women.
Although I was born in Pakistan, I've spent most of my life in this country. I've read the Quran both in English and in Arabic, and nowhere does it say that you do this and you go to heaven and have 70 wives. After September 11th, I spent most of my time on the front lines volunteering. And then one day at work, a delivery person called me a terrorist. Some people even said to my mother, "Go back home." My gentle mother.
One thing had touched me. I had a friend who worked in an Islamic website, and he brought a lot of hate emails. But this particular man, Jeff, he used all kind of language against Muslim and Allah. And I told my friend, we have to give people a space to release their anger and hate before we challenge and defend ourselves. The next day, Jeff wrote an apology. I'm ashamed. It has been a day to come to terms.
I was talking to my mother about the Pakistan-India conflict. I said, we're the same country. How much longer can this go? I told her that I wanted to start a collective Pakistani-Indian association here that would work towards peace in that part of the world. She said one person can't make a difference. If no one does anything, how do we expect things to change?
I'm young, and I don't understand much about wars or hatred, but I feel like I should apologize on behalf of humanity.
Can we open our hearts when we can't bear the pain? Can we recognize wisdom when the words aren't the same? If we open our minds, the limits are the skies. We can see a world of hope in each other's eyes.
I hope this, my voice or my word, even it can provoke something very powerful, even one person, to think or to reflect. He or she doesn't have to do anything, she has to stop 1 minute to reflect, to think what we have become and what we have done to each other, good or bad.
In each other's eyes, strength and beauty. In each other's eyes, in each other's eyes, in each other's eyes, courage and honesty. In each other's eyes, in each other's eyes, in each other's eyes, mystery and wonder. In each other's eyes, we can see a world of hope in each other's eyes. In each other's eyes.
كل الناس من آدم وآدم من تراب. All people are from Adam, and Adam is from dust.
Ăn trái nhớ kẻ trồng cây. When you eat a piece of fruit, remember who grew it.
لا تكرهوا شيئا لعله خير لكم. Don't hate that which befalls you. It could be the best thing.
Ty jesteś najmocniejsza. You are the strongest one.
Neki kar, darya mein dal. When you do something good, do it, and then forget about it.
Throughout your life, strive.
Nunca esqueça aonde o seu coração está. Never forget where your heart is.
We can see a world of hope in each other's eyes. Let no boundaries confine us. See no boundaries between us. We're a family of one, and the world is our home.
I am the sister of the moonlight answer, sharing the stars we see the world as one.
I am the brother of the freedom dancer, here in the village of Corazon. You are my brothers, we can laugh together. You are my sisters, we can walk as one. We'll build a shelter from the stormy weather, here in the village of Corazon. You are my brothers, we can laugh together. You are my sisters, we can walk as one. We'll build a shelter from the stormy weather, here in the village of Corazon.
Kusa, Kusa, Kino, Kusa, Brunera,
That's all, that's all.